Okay, this is The Grass is Greener on WXRW 104.1 FM in Milwaukee. I am the host of the program, Gary Grass. With me is my co-host, Rebecca Greneau.
Hi, and today we are pleased to have Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's a university professor at Columbia University and president of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. He is a world-renowned economist and a leading expert on sustainable development and global policy. Welcome, Jeffrey Sachs.
Hello.
Oh, sorry about that. I was on the wrong link.
Okay, yeah, it was our fault for sending you two. I mean, we had some technical issues with the first one, so we thought we'd be safer with this one. So, thank you very much for joining us.
We may have been better off if we had just done it from home.
Yeah. So anyway, great having you here. I don't want to waste any more time. I've been thinking that for the last several decades, policymakers in Washington and Europe have basically been thinking and acting like it's still 1991, and it's led us into deeper and deeper crises until now we've reached this turning point in history, and everyone just thinks that, you know, we get through this and we'll just go back to it being 1991 again because they're all imbeciles. You talk to these people. What the hell is wrong with them?
They are imbeciles. Okay, let's get right to the chase. I don't find them very self-aware, knowledgeable. They have no understanding of the rest of the world. And 1991 is a very interesting date because, of course, the Soviet Union ended that year. And the people in Washington said, okay, now we run the world. And
yeah, it was the end of history.
It was a delusion then, but now it is so wildly delusional that the fact that they continue to believe these things, well, we have the most delusional president in American history, and that is part of our problem right now. But I would say Trump is delusional, number one, but also in a city that, in Washington, and in a power structure that does not really understand very much about the world.
I mean, I think one of the things you can draw is a comparison between some of these leaders around the world who are really, really smart. I mean, you know, the quality of statecraft and just the way things are governed in China and Russia, and you look at all of the leadership in Iran that we've assassinated that all had 2 PhDs, and you know, I mean, it's like there's some very, very impressive people that are running other countries.
You can actually study that specifically by looking at who has studied what in different governments of the world, and I've done that recently. In the United States, there isn't one member of the Trump cabinet with a PhD in science or any other field, actually. I'm not saying you have to have a cabinet filled with PhDs, but this is the most untrained amateur hour imaginable.
That's kind of sad.
In China, with a cabinet of about the same size, there are, I think, 11 PhDs. We're just being run by ignorant people right now. And with Trump, they're ignorant and nasty. So they're ignorant and they don't want to hear from anybody else. They know just what to do.
They know it all.
They know it all, and they're getting us into deeper and deeper doo-doo every day.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Harris in the Fifth Riff said the first thing they did when they came in the first time around is throw out all the handbooks that had been left for them on how to do stuff.
Yeah, this is complete improv by arrogant, delusional amateurs. That's what we have right now. They've landed us in another disastrous war because they don't know anything. And they seem to have expected weird things to happen. Okay, we're going to kill the supreme leader, and then they're going to ask Donald Trump to appoint the next one.
Right. Yeah. No chance of
basically
him
what
becoming
Trump
a
said.
martyr. That's impossible. No one ever would have predicted that.
Exactly.
I mean,
Oh my God.
I think one of the things that deepens this crisis so much is, one aspect is that everyone has nukes, and that's just a nightmare ready to unfold. But you look at the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire, with its head cut off, could still run around and with some grace because the huge administration and bureaucracy just kept going and going and going and going. But we have an administration here that is like explicitly committed to destroying the administrative state, so there'll be nothing left when he's gone.
It's a very good analogy and a very good comparison, I should say. I can't decide. It depends on the day whether Trump aims to be Caligula, who pointed his horse to the Senate, or Nero, who, in his mad desire for admiration, spent most of his time as emperor trying to win beauty contests and talent shows and music festivals and poetry awards because he wanted the acclamation. And Trump is just such a profoundly unstable person mentally that he is both
he certainly wants the acclamation.
A narcissist and a megalomaniac, but he just wants every minute approval, and he wants obeisance. He wants people to bow down to him, as he puts it very eloquently. He wants people to kiss his ass, this is.
He can just pay for that.
Yeah,
but he wants leaders to do it.
Maybe that's what he's accumulating all his money for. Who knows? Oh my God.
I do have the feeling that things are changing and we're just not getting it here. That when this war in the Middle East is over, the map could look very different.
The economy is going to be different. Everything in the world is going to be different.
And we just are not, picking up on that.
What's true, what's the basic point is that we don't run the world. We don't dominate the world. We're militarily very powerful and nasty. But if you go to other countries, as I do for a living, and I just got back from China a couple of days ago, things work. Very sophisticated people. Technology is way ahead of ours in many areas. My wife and I say we know we're back in America when the plane lands and the elevator doesn't work, the escalator's broken, the moving walkway
Trump
doesn't
complains
work.
about the escalators too.
Yeah, well, there you go. But maybe instead of spending $1.5 trillion on bombing and killing other people, we could actually fix something
Fix the
in our
escalator.
country. Yeah, honestly, but it is the dominant feeling. You just sigh and, oh, we're back home. It's okay. I like being home, but I don't like the fact that everything's broken, and that all we do, all Trump does in his Nero fashion is strut and puff about how we run the world and how we're the greatest in everything as things break apart. And there's no attempt to understand anybody else. Of course, no respect. That is even going way too far. But just even the most basic understanding of Iran before you bomb them, maybe. you would
Yeah.
know something,
Yeah,
but
well,
we don't.
I mean, I think this it's an educational tool for Trump that you attack somebody and then afterwards you kind of figure out, oh, that's how that works. I mean, it's everything is like learning by doing, on the job.
Well,
You
that's
know,
what Mark Twain said, that war is God's way of teaching geography to Americans. Uh, oh, now we'll look at a map. Oh, that's where we're bombing. Oh, how interesting. Never heard of Isfahan before.
oh my God. Oh. Yeah, Trump recently said some nice things about China. I mean, he recently, he said, it's like, you know, they're a socialist country, which shouldn't work, but it works. I mean, it's amazing. Everything that I've always learned is like it doesn't work, and yet there they are, and it's working.
By the way, it was interesting that he said that because he can say anything at any time, but he's, trying to suck up before a trip that he's going to take there in a few weeks. That's what that was about.
Well, he's going to go over and try to kiss Xi's ass.
Who knows what he's going to try? I don't even want to think about it. It's too unpleasant to think about. But it's a very bad scene, and it's worse than amateur hour. It's delusion hour, and we're getting deeper and deeper into wars that Americans don't want, don't need, do nothing for us except raise our anxieties, our public debts, our insecurity, and this war against Iran is devastating, and it's going to devastate the whole world.
I mean, it already is. I mean, I'm seeing like little bits of news from like kind of like obscure countries that people don't normally get news about, where they've already reached a crisis in this area or that area. And I guess
there's a lot more to come. This is just the beginning, and what's happening, I think everybody understands, is that unlike past crises in this region where they turned off the spigot of oil, for example, in 1973-74, and there was an oil price shock, there wasn't the physical destruction of the oil and gas infrastructure so that you could turn the spigot back on. We talk every day, well, will the Strait of Hormuz be opened or not? The fact of the matter is they're destroying the physical production capacity in the region fast enough that we're going to come to a point soon where it doesn't matter whether the Strait of Hormuz is opened or not, because we will have bombed in the actual physical production of oil and gas. And I think this is a matter of weeks. I don't think this is a matter of years. And that's why every day the war goes on, and pretty sure Trump is going to land Marines someplace and do some
yeah, I mean, he says he wants to take Carg Island, but I don't know where he's going to take it to, because it's just going to be stuck there, and or it's going to be right there next to Iran, and they can do whatever they want to it.
I think this is right. It would be nice if Trump would get a briefing by somebody, but he doesn't want to get a briefing. He only wants
anyone who tells him the truth, he fires. That's the problem we have.
And he says, he says openly, look, we have a meeting and they tell me, and then they come around to do what I want.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's because he's so convincing. I mean, it's
very funny.
I think, and this. I think people do not recognize. As you said, they're not recognizing that this is going to be much more long lasting, right?
Yes.
But I also think they don't recognize. First of all, two things. I think some countries are better prepared for this than others. I mean, and some countries have built-in redundancies. They have reserves. I mean, they're still going to suffer, but they're not going to suffer as quickly or as hard as more fragile countries are going to suffer. And some countries are extremely fragile. And I think we have been putting ourselves on the fragile side of that equation. I think the United States is one of these countries that is like so dependent on everything being right there perfect. And I think we saw this during COVID. That we're not very resilient. We're not going to be able to adapt to this well.
Well, there are a lot of vulnerable people in our country right now because the systems don't work. The healthcare systems are so overpriced, and people can barely function right now. The public services don't work. The budget deficits at all levels of government are enormous. There is a kind of collapse of just normal operation of governance. We used to have a Congress. I used to be
I remember those
involved
days.
I used to be involved in it. You'd actually go testify to a committee that was interested in hearing and learning something. And then they'd actually work on a piece of legislation. So it wouldn't be an emergency decree. It wouldn't be the president invoking emergency powers. It would actually be what we used to call a deliberative process.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know it's a distant memory, but we used to have a government that, wasn't ever perfect, but it actually functioned. We don't have that right now. So when you talk about our vulnerability, it's because we don't have any normal processes right now. We don't have fact finding. We don't have reports. We don't have testimony. We have surliness, nastiness, subpoenas, shutdowns. This is not how a complex society can function. And if you want to have life in our country that works, it's a little complicated. People actually have to be professional. They have to know what they're doing, not this grotesque, delusional amateur hour that we have right now.
Well, at least we have federalism. So at least we have the state governments will stay running, even if the republic as a whole is a failed state. I don't know. One thing I wanted to I've read this really interesting article which basically says, look, people think about these like destruction of petroleum refineries and closing of the Strait of Hormuz all in terms of like energy, and energy is big, but this has wide-ranging consequences in all sorts of areas. I mean, it's
That's
like
correct.
It affects a lot more.
I mean, it's and people don't realize how petroleum fits in the supply chain as inputs in everything. I mean, it's just like it's fertilizer, it's plastics, it's
right.
like we need the sulfur from sour crude for all sorts of
medical
manufacturing.
things
I mean, it's
I think the main issue, which is you're exactly right, what you're bringing up is food security. In other words, we need on an ongoing basis actually to grow food.
Yes.
And it's for 8.1 billion people. And that requires a lot of nitrogen inputs. And that's what this region actually produces, about a third of the urea for the nitrogen-based fertilizers. Oh, well, we can stop it. Let's blow it up. We'll see what happens. It's every technical analysis one reads by the hour right now about the implications of what's happening.
Trump can just go to the cornfields and fertilize everything with his BS.
Well, he flies that plane and he drops it across America. So we already have even the technology to do that.
Oh dear.
Oh God.
I remember the last time you were on a program. I remember you saying, "Oh God." It's like.
But why is it even worse? Why is it even worse now?
I know it. It's like I think it's because I think we have
so much has changed for the worse in the last year. We had you on about a year ago, and if you think back to year past, could you even
The
have
halcyon
imagined?
days of 2025.
Yeah, could you even have imagined that things would be like they are now? Like we're in, a couple of wars, and we may actually even, be facing something that most folks don't even want to think about, and that is potential nuclear war.
I think it is like one of the psychologists that I was listening to about Trump's mental state saying a basic point. Ladies and gentlemen, dementia does not get better. And, we're not going to be in a better place with Trump's mentality
Right.
in 6 months or a year from now. And what we do have as a solution is actually the radical idea of actually making our government institutions work so that we're not dependent on Trump and Hegseth, but that actually we have processes, we have Congress that functions, Congress that has the sole power under the Constitution to declare war, that actually doesn't wipe its hands of this responsibility, but understands it is the core constitutional responsibility of Congress to oversee the use of the military. And it can't vote 3 times, 53 to 47. No, we don't want to have anything to do with it. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, that was so sad.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, right now they're just
Unbelievable.
delaying the vote until after the invasion. Then they can vote, right? They'll see if it fails, then they'll say they don't approve it, right?
Honestly, at the least we can do is to vote all these people out of office. If they won't do their job, if they won't do what their oath calls on
It's an oath
them
to
to
the
do,
Constitution, right?
is exactly, and defending the Constitution, if you're in Congress, means that items under Article 1 of the Constitution, which includes the declaration of war, are your responsibility, not something you can vote 53 to 47 to wash your hands of. This is the most basic point.
I think there's another point, and that is that I believe it's the 25th Amendment.
Right.
That there is, I mean,
It
if
is.
someone is
Unable to
perform
Yeah.
their duties as president, unstable, that they can be removed. They can be, let
Yeah.
them know that they have to step aside.
It is a very alarming and sad fact that this was also true of our preceding president.
Yeah.
And many of us sensed that
Right.
and said so. And I was, hushed up repeatedly. Oh, Jeff, you don't know what you're talking about. But I was speaking to leaders that were meeting with Biden, and they were saying, your man's not in good shape. And what alarms me is the fact that, again, since I'm not partisan in this stuff, I have regarded most of our recent presidents as awful.
For good reason.
We have a system that is totally geared towards spin, towards narrative control. And so you have all these adults, supposedly, whose job it is to hide the truth. And here we have an incapacitated president again, who obviously is ignorant as he has been his whole life, but delusional, psychopathic. You can go down the list. And it's all normalized. But it ain't normal, and it's very dangerous. And so you're right. This actually should be of grave concern for people who, under the Constitution, have a responsibility about this. And we just don't see that
Well,
happening right
yeah,
now.
my thought. I mean, and obviously, people have agency. People can step in and try to change these things. But as the way things are going, I think that eventually there will be things that happen that have just really terrible immediate consequences that will eventually force some sort of action, because things are just going to get worse and worse and worse until someone takes some sort of action. So I think it's inevitable that some action will get taken. But I think that the problem is that so many of the things that are being destroyed permanently, and the consequences are so long
Yep.
term that by the time that comes around, where the immediate crisis is apparent enough and strong enough to force someone's hand, it'll already be too late, and so many things will just be wrecked. Like
You're
you know,
exactly right. And spent much of today speaking online with other parts of the world, basically saying, could your country, your government, your leader step up now? We don't need to wait 8 weeks, 12 weeks at the rate we're destroying the Middle East. That's not good enough to wait to say how mistaken and horrible it was. Why don't we do something now? And
Hmm.
I do actually believe that if other world leaders got together and explained to Mr. Trump, sit down, have a warm tea, take it easy, put your legs up, but stop your damn war before it destroys us all. It
you,
would actually make a
you've done
difference.
so much for us already. Let us. Why don't you just step down and go to this nice little island, and we'll build a gold
A
statue for you.
Exactly. He could go to Carg Island. We could not bomb it. We could just,
He could,
respect him there. I'm sure Kushner could build a nice little villa for him.
Yes.
It could be a mini golf course. Many things could be done that would actually save the world and save us trillions of dollars of losses, as well as the losses of lives that are imminently going to occur.
us and so many others. I mean, it's just because it's like, I mean, I think this. I mean, as we've said before, this is a disaster for the United States, but it is a disaster that it affects the whole world, all
Yeah,
sorts of countries. I mean,
there's no part of the world that is really immune from this. This is this is one of those things. There are no winners in this one. Not Israel, which is a
oh
major
gosh,
protagonist of this. They're going to pay a, a absolutely horrific price for this. They've caused such disaster. The United States is not getting out of this. The rest of the world. This is one of the true lose, lose, lose situations that you can see. No one's walking away from this without a great deal of damage. But it's exactly what you said. The sooner it stops, the more we avoid irreversible, catastrophic losses. So I don't, it's great to be with you guys, but I don't want to do it in 2 months' time saying, why didn't they stop it before they destroyed everything? And you'll tell me I'm feeling even worse than when we were together now.
well, yeah, yeah. Hopefully, we still have radio stations then. I mean, that's like,
Oh God. Thank you for letting
Thanks.
me join you today. It's
Yeah, no
and
problem.
and commiserate and let's talk soon.
yes.
All right. Thank
Thank
you
you. Will
much.
do. All right.
Great.
Bye
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.
Um.
All right. So for the second half of our program, we have Franny and Marie from the Rapid Response Group. I first came to notice them as they were sending things to some of the major media, and I thought, it would be good to find a little bit more about this group and their project. To get things out in the media. So welcome, Franny and Marie.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
So, well, why don't you start by clarifying what exactly this group is and what it is it does?
Well, we're a group of, actually, it comes down to about three friends who happen to have met through past solidarity work, peace work, and so forth. And we noticed that the pro-war narratives in the press have been so pervasive for so long that about 3 years ago, or a little bit more, we decided, well, okay, what we'd do is we would start to try to systematically, just the three of us, with a few other people who actually, read our stuff every so often in a small group and occasionally participate themselves, that we would try to write to the major media when they have an article on something and there's a comment section available, and make our comments. And occasionally write a letter to the editor, but it's more responding in the comments section.
Okay, and what topics or what particular? I mean, you mentioned like the it being a pro-narrative war narrative that you're opposing. This is like the Ukraine war, the Gaza, Iran? Is it all the above?
Well, I'll try to answer that, and then Marie can join in. We began with a focus on the war in Ukraine, mainly because there was a wide variety of opinions, and the propaganda machine in the press seemed to be favoring um, supporting Ukraine in the war against Russia without explaining how the war came to be and what needed to be done to bring the war to an end. Now, I can speak for myself. I'm neither for or against Ukraine or Russia. I'm for peace. I'm for ending the war. But I found it very offensive to find um, a constant drumbeat of propaganda for war, for continuing the war, and for um, defeating Russia, and for weakening Russia and evilizing Russia. And I thought, along with my colleagues, that it was important to counter that.
I
Yeah,
noticed that some of your writings have been very suggesting that there needs to be dialogue, that there should have been negotiations. Am I correct in that?
yeah. In other words, um, one way of putting it might be that to try to prevent wars all in this to prevent wars to start with, which means not provoking them, which means, as you say, using dialogue. And if a war starts, which is a very bad thing, to try to stop it as expeditiously as possible, rather than, and again, as you say, through dialogue. Um, and instead of continually escalating. And we certainly saw that there were opportunities with the Ukraine war to have stopped it. And apparently, it was actually a war that seemed to be desired not on just one side, but it seemed to be desired by the West as well. And there were opportunities both to prevent it through the Minsk Accords, for example, and to stop it very early on with the first Istanbul talks,
Mhm.
which came very close to fruition. And this is very troubling, and it's the sort of thing that is not really talked about in the mainstream media.
And it seems to me like the the forces that are going to be pushing for war are always going to be this enormous juggernaut. And you're talking just about like a small group of friends that's writing back against this. I guess one question is, what hope do you have against this monster machine on the other side that you're going to achieve anything?
Well, I think there's always hope. When there's no hope, I think we're really in trouble. So let me just lead with that. Um, we never know what changes this juggernaut. It's a collection of efforts. And if we can um, contribute our efforts to this stopping this juggernaut, it's part of the process. Stopping war, ending war, is requires a lot of effort from a lot of places. So the fact that we're just a small group writing comments to a select number of newspapers is fine with me. And I think it's just part of that collective effort.
So you're not alone.
No,
And
we're
one
not
of the
alone. And we get a lot of comments. I think that's an important thing too, is that people will comment on the contributions that we make, and it gives us a chance to continue the dialogue. And it gives us a chance to hone our our own perspective and our own way of talking to people about it. I know that the experiences I have in writing comments spill over to everyday life when I talk to people, and when I participate in public events.
And we see, although the prevailing comments may be more pro-war, even the fact that maybe our comments are coming in, our few comments, we feel that this gives courage to people who felt they were alone or felt that they, that nobody else thought as they did. And that this, and we can tell, for example, sometimes there are mechanisms for people liking or recommending what we do. And sometimes we get, if you get 56 recommendations on the New York Times, I think that's pretty good.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that it's and the other thing is, and one reason maybe that it's nice to be talking to you there in Milwaukee, is that this is something that other people can do. And, groups of friends or people who've met each other through some activist group or community group, they can do this too. And it's something that is great for, say, older people who might have a harder time getting out, can sit at home and do this. Or maybe there are parts of the country where there aren't as many organizations that you could belong to and be heard through your organization. So you can be heard this way.
That's a good point. I mean, I've seen just we were recently out at the No Kings protests and everything and talking to people. I was at three different protests and talking to people about, how they got involved in things. And they often did mention that they saw something in the press and it got them going. And they'd reach out to others and, kind of form, I don't know, links that way. And so potentially that is what you're doing.
Yeah, you can have a little Google group or whatever way is the easiest and fastest way to perhaps communicate and post what you've posted to some newspaper. Um, and certainly for maybe some of your listeners who hear another perspective, you bring on people like uh, Larry, I'm trying to think of his last name.
Larry Johnson, yes.
Yeah, right. And you bring on people like that who give an alternative perspective. So who knows? You may know that some of your listeners may be inspired to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I think, yeah.
I'd like to add something, which is that it's nice to be able to do this with a group, even if it's a small group of two or three. We compare analyses and we talk about what we're doing. And I think that that's a healthy way to, develop a perspective on something. Certainly one can be an individual commenter, but it's much more fun. And our political work should be fun.
Right.
It's much more fun if you've got two or three people working on the same thing. And sometimes you don't see something that somebody else in the group sees and flags, makes a comment, and we can chime in with our own comments. So there's a real advantage to having a small group. And
I
people
don't think
should
I
not
could
be
have continued.
afraid of being a novice. We all started out as novices doing this.
I don't think I could have continued for all this time if it weren't for the others.
Good point.
Yeah.
Gary, did you have something?
I was wondering when you make these comments or the sort of push a counter narrative. Are you are you using a lot of facts that have not been widely distributed? Are you doing research and like making a factual set of arguments? Or are you like just sort of like holding up what other people are saying and like applying some common sense and values to it and saying, look at what you're saying here. Yeah, it seems like sometimes you don't even really need your own insights or research. You can just say, like, what would you say if that was being done to us? What would you say if the situation was reversed? What's the principle behind this? That doesn't make any sense, right? Just think for a second, So.
I'd say it's a combination of both. I do research occasionally for comments that I leave. Some of it has to do with what is in the piece that I'm reading, and I check the facts, or I want to know a little bit more about something. So I do some research, and there are times when I simply adhere to the script, which is that diplomacy and peace are the best paths to end war. And I read, what it is in the article and try to figure out how to steer readers to that perspective, which is that diplomacy and peace through diplomacy rather than through military might is the most sane and the safest thing for all of us.
I agree. And I think people should not feel intimidated about doing it because maybe they don't know as much as others if they, just write a principled and simple. Doesn't have to be going on and on. It can be a sentence. It can be two sentences or three sentences, like, how about we look at this from a peace perspective? Are we sure we need to, send more weapons to blah, blah, blah? Or it can be a lot of fun, actually, or I don't know, it's an interesting kind of fun. I shouldn't probably use that word, but it's fascinating. I'll use that word instead to do some research, and we often do that as well. And sharing research, maybe some people would want to share research with friends. Certainly, there are lots of places to go to, including shows like yours. But Larry Johnson comes from a group called Veteran Professionals for Sanity. And if you look that up
Yeah, yeah.
online, just
They're
about
an
any
intelligence professionals for sanity.
intelligence professionals,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
yes, yes, yes.
veteran intelligence professionals for sanity. Yes, sorry. And the Quincy Institute, you can look at what they've got to say. Um, you know, the, track people like John Mearsheimer or various people who are not heard any longer in mainstream. They were once, but they're not anymore so much. They don't get the interviews, but they're online and they're getting interviewed in alternative, venues.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that, which is just because an article that you read has a lot of so-called factual information and is focused on a particular line of arguing or argument doesn't mean that you need to respond to that directly. I often will read something about, let's say, all the technological advances in weaponry that, let's say, Ukraine is moving forward with. But my response is not to focus on the weaponry, but to simply say focusing on the weaponry does not bring us any closer to peace, does not bring us any closer to ending the war. And instead of giving a blow by blow detail of which weapons are doing what, why don't we spend more time talking about what are the paths through diplomacy for ending this war?
Yeah, I think one of the common themes of war propaganda is always rah rah, our side is going to win, we're doing so well. And I'm wondering, what other, in looking at all this sort of war propaganda, what other sort of tropes do you see repeated over and over that you have to constantly respond to, regardless of what the conflict is? I mean, it seems like there's, I think that I can think of a few off the top of my head, but why don't you What do you see a lot of in the propaganda?
Well, it's certainly a given. It's certainly a given that certain groups of people, certain nations, are the bad guys. There's you always a new Satan someplace, and it could be Russia. It could be it could be Iran, and the people are portrayed, or it could be the Palestinians who are portrayed as crazy terrorists who
Yeah.
it killed a lot of people, and so therefore they have no cause, and there's no reason why anyone should pay attention to them. Or, the Russians are bad, and people don't. It's a lack of knowledge, to some extent, because it's sort of like people have made Putin into this horrible, horrible satanic character, this new Hitler, and people are unaware, and it's too bad that there are voices that are much more conservative in Russia today, and they are pushing for a much more aggressive war. And Putin is almost being, he's in danger, he could be in danger of being discredited for his own, let's say, moderation. Although some people would say, oh my God, he's not moderate at all. But actually, that's just that's one narrative. But if you look at, sort of the facts on the ground or whatever, it's not necessarily true.
Putin waited for a lot of provocation before stepping in. People were talking about him stepping in long before he actually did, and not just here, but in Russia, there was a lot of pressure to step in much earlier than they did.
And
Um,
our own diplomats years ago warned that this would happen, that Ukraine was going to be in NATO would be the reddest of red lines, to quote, one of our own statesmen. Um,
And
and
now, and
and
just before this, the Iran
yeah,
war, they were
yeah,
doing the same thing.
yeah.
exactly. And
We
you
wouldn't
asked,
tolerate a hostile government in Mexico arming themselves to the teeth, planning for a land invasion of the
right,
United States, right?
would
So,
you accept Russian missiles on our Canadian border?
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
Right.
go-to response that sometimes, helps to have in the back of your mind when you're looking at these things and when you're writing responses.
I think one of the important tropes is to arouse fear, at least from the perspective of the United States, is to arouse fear in the American public. And if we can make the American public very fearful of a created enemy, the American public will rise to the occasion. At least that's the old model. I think the U.S. has met its match with Iran, where the overwhelming, overwhelmingly the public is against this. And that creation of enemies and the building of fear is something that I think is pretty scary and is used so very often to get people to back an unnecessary war.
And
Yeah.
you asked if there was any, if we were only focused on Ukraine, which is in fact what we did start out with, because we, were very concerned about the possibilities for nuclear war, for one thing, that were involved in that confrontation, or if it was sort of wars in general. And I would say go a step beyond. It's yes, more. We see these as having many interconnections. These wars, and we're trying to, in some cases, branch out and show these interconnections, which in some cases are the desperate, efforts to maintain U.S. hegemony, and that is, you know, uh, part of this. And it's very, very scary. That's not the only thing that it ties them all together. It's also, they're all tied together because of the possible links that could, create a nuclear Armageddon for us. It's not such a good thing.
Yeah, it seems like the U.S. and its military and foreign adventures has gotten much more reckless lately, and just pushing everything. Even you've got nuclear powers on the other side. You've got parties involved that are nuclear, and it's just press, 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 press with no release. And it's like, we need a reverse gear. We need a neutral. I mean, it's like we can't just keep on like gunning it, and it's like I think it's just crazy. But
That's why it's good to have people speaking out and voices like yours. And are you encouraging others to get involved, either through you or starting their own group?
Well, I think it's important for people to start their own groups. I think if there are many, many, many groups of 2 and 3 people getting together and selecting what it is they want to do in response to the press, like our little rapid response group, that's really a very powerful approach. It doesn't have a lot of bureaucracy. It's very simple. It's very flexible, and it's very doable. And you'd be surprised how friendships grow and it becomes a lot more fun than doing it by yourself. But we're not really asking people to join us. We're asking people to form their own groups and figure out how it is that they want to go about this.
Yeah, we're not in a position to be an organization, quote unquote, and to pull some big thing together. That's not us. But an idea is a powerful thing, and that's what we hope might fly out across the airwaves in some way or another. Um, and it's like maybe if there's a core of maybe 2 or 3 people at the minimum, then other people might come in around the edges, but if they're
right.
friends and they know each other or like each other, perhaps because they belong to some other organization, and then they go, I'll come. I'd like to be in your Google group or whatever. It's they've got a basis for their they've got a basis for their support of one another. It's something. It's more personal,
Mhm.
um, because they already somewhat know each other, at least somewhat.
Yeah,
Let me
when
add
you
something, which is that we don't really have any rules. We don't have a charter. We don't have any rules. We don't have it's pretty loose. And we just, as we're reading the newspaper or the online version of something, of multiple um, media sources, if we see something that catches our eye, we submit it. We submit it to each other and we submit it to friends. And then if the others, 2 of us in the group, choose to comment and add more, it happens. But there's no rule that we have to have 2 or 3 a day or 5 a week, or, if someone comments, somebody else has to comment. It's pretty loose. And we've been pretty fortunate that we're a likable little group for each other. And it just has been easy.
And some people just, a couple of people just read and they'll say to me, "Oh, I read what you wrote in your comment." Oh, and I didn't know they were reading it, but okay, it boosts you. It makes you say, "Okay, I'll get up one more time and, look at the online
It's
papers
yeah.
and
good
so."
to have that positive feedback.
Yeah, I'm occasionally have people come up and disabuse me of the notion that no one actually listens to this program. Yeah, because you can't really tell when you're putting it out whether anyone's seeing it or not. And then every once in a while, someone will come back to me. And it's like, oh wow, people are actually seeing this. That's nice.
And we
So
do get comments from readers. I mean, I get a lot of comments on some things, and I try to respond to them because I think it's important that, you know, I often get things like um, some kind of made up Russian slur, which is supposed to be an insult to me. And then I'll write back things like an insult is not an argument.
Right.
So, there are ways to respond to the comments that people make and in a productive way because people read the comments you make about comments. So it's an interesting process.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you
It's
for
been a
having
pleasure.
us on your show. Bye.
so I just wanted to put in a little explanation here at the end because you kind of heard uh, uh, Maria, I think it was, shouting a little bit to say goodbye there. Just to explain, we lost our audio at the end of that segment, so they could not hear us, and so we ended that segment a little earlier than we had expected, and then that's why we decided to change things up and we sent a second link to Professor Sachs, and so that's why he was actually a little bit late, which you didn't hear because that the waiting for him was also edited out. So you've gotten a slightly edited version, but the everything that we've said is genuine and nothing is like AI generated or anything like that. And Betsy has another little note here.
Yes, since they didn't get to mention it, Franny and Marie wanted me to mention that Yahoo News is an excellent source of mainstream articles on which you can comment. For people who don't want to take out a subscription to the big paywalled newspapers like New York Times and Washington Post, they can Google Yahoo News in quotes, along with, quote, Ukraine or, quote, Iran war. And that will bring up a variety of articles from corporate media, ranging from CNN to Reuters and to many others. And you could comment in their comment section. So that's something anyone can do from your, you know, from your sitting room, from your, sitting at the kitchen table. As long as you have your computer, you can do that, and you don't even have to start your own group.
Okay, and just following up on Professor Sachs too, we did not get any explicit what you can do's, but if you listen to that broadcast, I think everyone should be encouraged to hold their elected representatives accountable, to call, to write, to pester them, to get them to restrain Caligula before it's too late. And if let them know that if not, then you will not be voting for their reelection. So, anything else you want to add?
Little thing. I just saw that the Pope has put out since it is coming up on Easter, a message to Trump that leaders who uh, I can't read my own writing.
You never can. Just
Leaders who advocate for war, their prayers won't be answered, and that Jesus his name should never be used to justify a war.
right. And they said there's no such thing as a just war. Jesus stands for peace, and that politicians, Catholics that are advocating the war should go to confession over that. So I mean, he said a lot of good things on this. I'm liking the Pope's anti-war stance. So that's it for the show. Thank you everyone for being here on this lovely March 31st. If you happen to hear this broadcast tomorrow, it is not an April Fool prank. It is all real. So thank you again. That's our show for the week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.